What of a forgotten voice in the heart of the Roman establishment, a voice silenced by history, holds a key to understanding the trial of Jesus Christ in a new light? Imagine Mel Gibson, a filmmaker known for his relentless pursuit of authenticity in portraying the Passion, uncovering a rare and unsettling testimony, not from a disciple or a critic, but from Claudia Procula, the wife of Pontius Pilate himself. What if an ancient scroll once dismissed has surfaced, containing her detailed and deeply personal account of those fateful days? Claudia was no mere bystander. She was an insider, living within a Roman palace, witnessing the political machinations and sensing the spiritual earthquake that was a trial of Jesus. While crowds screamed for crucifixion, Claudia saw something different, something that would haunt and ultimately transform her. Could this be a perspective Gibson sought, a hidden layer to the greatest story ever told? Married to the Roman governor of Judea, Claudia Procula was described as elegant, quiet, and observant, while her husband, Pilate, navigated the treacherous political currents of Jerusalem. She moved silently in the background, attuned to the whispers, the shifting tensions, and the faces of those caught in the unfolding drama. Then came Jesus of Nazareth. Unlike others in her elite Roman circle who might have dismissed him with scorn, Claudia found herself increasingly drawn to the stories surrounding him. His miracles, his words, the undeniable power in his eyes. A restlessness stirred within her, a mixture of wonder and perhaps a nascent fear, as she was unknowingly pulled into a divine narrative that would forever alter her destiny. As a small thank you for joining us today, we offer a moment of shared blessing. Comment with the word faith if you're open to receiving a special closing thought dedicated to all who participate. And please tap like if you appreciate these moments. Claudia lived in a state of quiet conflict, torn between the inherent pride of her Roman lineage and profound mystery emanating from this man from Nazareth. With each passing day, as rumors intensified and the atmosphere in Jerusalem grew more charged, a deep knowing settled in her soul. Her husband was about to face a decision that would echo through eternity. How could a man who taught love, healed the sick, and preached peace be treated as a common criminal? The question, the transcription suggests, haunted her. Living amidst luxury, Claudia was not naive to the brutality of Roman rule in Judea. She saw the unrest, the oppression, the blood often spilled to maintain order, and it deeply troubled her. The more she observed, the clearer it became. Rome wasn't just quelling a potential rebellion. It was attempting to silence something holy, something eternal, embodied in Jesus. While Pilate feared losing control, Claudia sensed a far greater danger, that they were on the verge of destroying someone sent by God. Be sure to stay with us, as around chapter 4, we'll explore the details of Claudia's chilling dream about Jesus and her desperate attempts to warn Pilate, a plea that, if unheeded, could seal not only Christ's fate, but also cast a long shadow over their own lives. What did she see that filled her with such dread? The unease Claudia Procula felt wasn't just a vague premonition. The transcription describes it culminating in a terrifyingly vivid dream, an event that would surely capture the attention of an investigator like Mel Gibson, known for his interest in the mystical and spiritual dimensions of the Passion story. Imagine Gibson poring over accounts detailing this dream. Claudia saw Jesus, not as a political agitator, but bathed in an otherworldly light, walking calmly towards his fate, fully aware of the agony ahead, yet carrying an undeniable divine presence. She awoke in a cold sweat, heart pounding, her spirit profoundly shaken, convinced this was no ordinary nightmare, but a direct warning from heaven itself. Overwhelmed by a sense of impending catastrophe, Claudia, according to this testimony, rushed to her husband, Pontius Pilate. Her voice trembling, her eyes wide with fear, she pleaded with him, begged him to have nothing to do with the condemnation of this man, Jesus. She recounted the dream, the ethereal light, the profound silence, the sorrow etched on Jesus' face, and the overwhelming anguish that had gripped her own spirit. This wasn't just about Roman politics or maintaining order anymore. For Claudia, this had become something sacred, something far greater, and she desperately tried to convey this urgency to Pilate. However, Pilate, ever the pragmatist, the Roman governor tasked with keeping a rebellious province in check, reportedly brushed off her fears. He dismissed her vision as a mere troubling dream, a figment of a woman's vivid imagination, offering cold comfort where she sought urgent action. Yet Claudia knew, with a certainty that defied her husband's skepticism, that if Jesus were condemned, something irreversible and devastating would be set in motion, a decision that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Despite the risk to her own position, her influence, even her husband's trust, the fear of witnessing a profound injustice was greater. With a quiet but resolute voice, the account says, she confronted Pilate once more. "This man is innocent," she whispered. "There's more at stake than you realize. Please, don't be the one to do this." But deep down, a chilling realization was dawning. The decision she feared had already been made, and the nightmare was only just beginning to unfold. How did Pilate, caught between his wife's desperate warning and the mounting political pressure, proceed as Jesus stood before him? As the fateful day of Jesus' trial dawned, the dread Claudia Procula felt intensified to an almost suffocating degree. Imagine Mel Gibson as an investigator of this sacred drama, focusing on Claudia's desperate, final attempts to sway her husband, Pontius Pilate. The transcription paints a picture of her pleading with him one last time. "Don't let the empire bear the stain of condemning someone so pure," she reportedly begged. "This man is unlike any other who's walked our land." She saw Jesus' innocence with clarity, an innocence that seemed to radiate a divine quality. But Pilate, Claudia perceived, remained cold, calculating, unmoved by her spiritual anguish. To him, her fears were superstition, emotions clouding the harsh political realities he faced. As governor of volatile Judea, he felt he had to project strength and decisiveness, especially with religious leaders clamoring for Jesus' death and the city teetering on the brink of revolt. Claudia watched her husband prepare for the tribunal, his face pale and drawn, already bearing the weight of a decision no man should have to make. From her vantage point, perhaps within the palace, she witnessed the scene unfold. The roar of the crowd outside, the cacophony of accusations, blasphemy, rebellion, hurled at Jesus within the judgment hall. Each word, the account suggests, felt like a dagger to Claudia. She knew, with a chilling certainty, that they weren't just condemning Jesus. They were sealing the fate of something sacred, something eternal. She understood Pilate's predicament. He didn't truly want to condemn Jesus, but he couldn't afford a riot that would incur Rome's wrath. The demands of the priests and the mob grew louder, more insistent, drowning out any possibility of mercy. The transcription describes Claudia watching Pilate closely, seeing composure he usually wore crumble, revealing a man weary, conflicted, and tormented by doubt. He tried to reason with the crowd, to offer an alternative, perhaps Barabbas, but his words were lost in the furious cries of "Crucify him." The priests pressed relentlessly for execution. In that moment, Claudia saw not a decisive governor, but a man broken by the weight of choice he felt powerless to make according to justice. Then came the symbolic act that would forever define Pilate's role in this tragedy. He took a basin of water and washed his hands before the crowd. For Claudia, this simple gesture was a profound and chilling surrender, not just to the mob, but to fear, to political expediency, to the encroaching darkness. Though his hands appeared clean, she knew his soul was irrevocably stained. The verdict was sealed by fear and pride. What were Claudia's thoughts and feelings as the sentence was carried out? And how did the image of Jesus sustain her through the unfolding horror? As the irrevocable verdict echoed, Claudia Procula, according to the narrative, felt time itself stop. The final chance to prevent the unthinkable was gone. Imagine Mel Gibson trying to capture the silent despair of a witness to injustice, focusing on Claudia's retreat into her chambers. The palace, once a symbol of Roman dignity and power, now felt lifeless, like a tomb, the very air thick with sorrow too deep for words, as if Jerusalem itself held its breath. She watched her husband, Pilate, retreat into his own silent, stoic brokenness. He had washed his hands before the crowd, a public display of absolution, but Claudia knew, with chilling certainty, that no water could cleanse the stain on his soul from a decision he couldn't escape. For Claudia, the emptiness was profound, yet her mind was filled with a haunting image of Jesus, serene, silent, and dignified even amidst the hatred and false accusations. His calmness, his quiet strength under unimaginable pressure, was a stark contrast to the chaos around him. It was this image, this powerful, silent testimony, that began to work on her spirit. The dream she had dismissed now felt like a prophecy unfolding, and all she could do was wait and watch as the tragedy played out. The news that Jesus was being taken away to be tortured struck her like a blade. Though she had only seen him briefly, his presence was unforgettable. Now, that same man was in the hands of brutal soldiers, mocked, humiliated, crowned with thorns, treated like a criminal, though he had only spoken of love, peace, and forgiveness. How could such purity be met with such cruelty? This question, a filmmaker like Gibson might ponder, lay at the heart of Claudia's anguish. Though powerless to stop the physical events, she felt every lash, every insult, every thorn as if it were tearing through her own soul. Beneath the horror and revulsion, a strange, sacred pull compelled her to know more, to understand the divine mystery hidden within his suffering. And then, in a brief, unexpected moment described in some traditions, her eyes met his. That gaze, quiet, clear, eternal, pierced through her defenses. Jesus looked at her, the account suggests, with a serenity that defied logic, with a depth that saw past her status, her fears, her husband's actions, and into her very soul. In those few seconds, Claudia reportedly felt an overwhelming compassion, a silent strength, and a knowledge that needed no words. He didn't look like a prisoner awaiting death, but as one who knew her and had already forgiven. If this depiction of Christ's boundless compassion, even in his darkest hour, touches your heart, we invite you to share amen in the comment below. That gaze, that moment of profound, undeserved grace, would follow Claudia forever, a light shining in her shame, the beginning of something sacred awakening within her. As the day of crucifixion arrived, how did this burgeoning understanding shape her experience of the ultimate sacrifice? The day of the crucifixion, as recounted through the lens of Claudia Procula's experience, dawned with an almost palpable sense of despair. Imagine Mel Gibson as an investigator trying to understand the intimate human impact of this cosmic event, focusing on Claudia's state, a deep, suffocating anguish gripping her from the earliest light, as if her very soul were unraveling. She knew Jesus was condemned to carry his own cross to Golgotha, and though the transcription suggests she couldn't bring herself to physically follow that grim procession, her mind and spirit were intensely connected to his suffering. It was as if she could feel every stumble he made on the Via Dolorosa, the bite of the whip, the jeers of the crowd, a profound empathy that transcended physical presence. The narrative then offers a remarkable insight into Claudia's memory of Jesus' appearance, details a filmmaker like Gibson, obsessed with authentic portrayal, would find invaluable. When she remembered him, it wasn't a majestic, idealized figure in a Roman sense of power, but something far more striking in its quiet, defiant truth. She recalled him having dark skin, whether by sun and time, the face of a man who walked among ordinary people, not above them. His presence, she felt, defied every conventional expectation of a king or a legendary hero. It was rooted in a lived reality, a profound humanity. His hair was dark, somewhat wavy, perhaps unkempt from the elements, framing a face that carried an inherent dignity without any effort or pretense. But it was his eyes that left the most indelible mark on Claudia's soul, according to this account. She described them as brown, deep, and unyielding, and when she looked into them, it felt like plunging into a sea of unspoken truth. There was a compassion there, piercing and profound, as if he saw everything within a person, their flaws, their fears, their hidden goodness, and still loved what he saw. In that gaze, her own doubts and worldly beliefs began to tremble. His beard was trimmed but not elaborately styled, befitting a man of simplicity, yet conveying a soft but undeniable strength. Claudia realized the narrative suggests that Jesus' true beauty wasn't in physical form as the Romans might define it, but radiated from his very presence, an invisible but palpable sacred strength and quiet power. To the world, he might look like an ordinary man from Galilee, but to Claudia, he now represented something timeless, something eternal. How did this profound perception of Jesus influence her understanding of the trial itself, particularly his much-noted silence before his accusers? As the trial of Jesus commenced, Claudia Procula, from her vantage point within the palace, observed a scene both solemn and chaotic. Imagine Mel Gibson, as a director known for capturing the intensity of human drama, exploring Claudia's unique perspective on Jesus' demeanor. The transcription describes Jesus standing accused by priests and leaders who hurled charges of blasphemy and rebellion with venomous passion. Yet, amidst their shouting and theatrical gestures, Jesus said nothing. He offered no defense. Claudia, watching this, couldn't understand his silence initially, but she could feel its power. It was not the silence of weakness or guilt, but an almost otherworldly strength, as if he already knew the outcome, as if every insult and lie was part of a divine plan far greater than anyone in that room could grasp. Claudia's gaze also turned to her husband, Pilate. She saw him pale, tense, unlike his usual composed self. Every word he spoke, every glance towards Jesus, every attempt to calm the storm of accusations, revealed a man slowly unraveling under immense pressure. He was caught between Roman law, political expediency, and something spiritual he couldn't comprehend or control. When Pilate, torn and unsteady, asked the crowd what he should do with Jesus, the reply came like thunder: "Crucify him." The word struck Claudia like a physical blow. The moment she had prayed against had arrived, and she was powerless to stop it. Yet, even then, Jesus remained still, his gaze serene, seemingly accepted his fate not with defeat, but with profound, unwavering purpose. This image of peace in the face of such cruelty etched itself into her memory like a sacred wound. If this exploration of faith, inner conflict, and divine composure in the face of injustice speaks to your heart, supporting us with a like and subscribing to the channel allows us to continue sharing these compelling historical and spiritual narratives. The narrative suggests that when Claudia heard Jesus was being led to Golgotha, her spirit collapsed further into despair. Though she couldn't follow the procession, her mind walked every step with him, imagining the weight of the cross on his scourged back, the jeers, the nails, the unimaginable pain. When news finally reached the palace that he had been nailed to the cross and lifted high, the account described Claudia's pain as sharp and invisible, as if a blade had pierced her own spirit. She had never fully understood who he was, but she knew this man carried a sacred burden, and now he was exposed, alone, bleeding under a sun that had witnessed too much cruelty. Then, as if nature itself recoiled in horror, the skies began to darken, and the earth, they said, began to tremble. Claudia knew this was no ordinary death. This was the turning of an age, the extinguishing of the divine light by a world that failed to recognize it. What transformation could possibly follow such profound darkness and despair? As the earth trembled and the sky darkened over Golgotha, Claudia Procula, even from a distance, knew that this was no ordinary death. Imagine Mel Gibson as he explores these accounts, considering the profound impact these cosmic signs would have had on a woman already sensitized by her dream and her brief, piercing encounter with Jesus. For Claudia, the crucifixion wasn't just a state execution. It was a moment that tore history in two, a sacred ground where something within her broke, and yet, paradoxically, something deeper began to awaken. In the days that followed, the transcription suggests she withdrew into silence, the weight of what she had witnessed, the guilt and the dawning understanding, too profound for words. Then came the whispers, growing into a roar that even palace walls couldn't contain. He had risen. Jesus was alive. Initially, Claudia, like many, might have dismissed it as the desperate hope of heartbroken followers. Resurrection defied logic, shattered reason. But the testimonies mounted, not just from disciples, but reportedly from soldiers and others within the Roman court. The tomb was sealed, guarded, yet empty. For Claudia, this news, combined with the vivid memory of her dream, Jesus bathed in light, serene in his foreknowledge and the unforgettable power of his gaze, a gaze of forgiveness and peace even as he faced condemnation, began to converge into an undeniable truth. The veil was lifted from her eyes. This was not just a righteous man unjustly killed. This was a divine, alive, victorious, unstoppable. This realization, as Gibson might portray in his exploration of her story, was transformative. If Jesus had truly risen, then every word he spoke about love, peace, and hope was eternal truth. Claudia's faith, once shaped by Roman ritual and imperial power, was shattered and rebuilt on something infinitely deeper and more personal. A miracle she had witnessed not with her eyes alone, but with her soul. From that moment, Claudia Procula, the wife of the Roman governor, carried the unshakable knowledge that she had been a privileged, albeit initially reluctant, witness to the most sacred event in all of history. Her testimony, a forgotten voice now perhaps being reconsidered, offers a unique perspective on the passion and resurrection, seen not through the eyes of a disciple, but a Roman noblewoman whose life was forever changed by an encounter with the living God. As we reflect on the power of Christ's victory over death and the transformation it brings, we invite you to affirm your faith. Comment, "Jesus is the King," below. And your journey doesn't have to end here. Click the video now appearing on your screen for another powerful message we prepared for you.